Hi friends, Jan at the Moline Library here. Today we are going to be making the spell books that are the take-home craft for tweens and teens for October. In addition to what came in your kit, you will need a glue gun, unless you borrowed one from the library, and I would recommend that you have something on hand to cover your workstation and to clean up your hands when you're done, because this can get kind of messy. So the first step is planning. I'm going to go ahead and plug in my glue gun so that starts to warm up for me. And I have decided to keep it kind of simple. I'm going to just do a skeleton and a snake and just kind of have them on there. And I'm going to leave a little bit of room at the top to write some words with hot glue. So once my hot glue gun is warmed up, that's what I'm going to do. All right, so I've got these glued on, and I'm checking to make sure that they're down pretty securely. Looks like my skeleton head wants to pop up, so I'm going to give that another little go. And I'm also, as I'm going, I'm trying to take the little strings off because it won't really affect it, but can be kind of annoying later when you're painting and you get those little strings on your paintbrushes. So as you can see, I've got those glued down, and next I'm going to use the hot glue gun itself to write directly on the book the word spells. And I'm going to make sure that I have enough space so I don't end up with a book like this where I just have a spell instead of spells. So I'm just using the glue gun right on the book and just kind of drawing on it, making sure that that's kind of, it leaves a good, that it's up pretty high. Oops, glue stick fell out. So we want it to create a nice ridge there. And you don't have to worry too much about if it looks nice or not. Kind of the whole point of this is that it is kind of creepy. So just going to get that right on there. And you can use this technique as well. In addition to writing words, you could use it to draw other things on your books. You could draw the spider web or your own creatures. Drawing with the hot glue gun is a little tricky, but you can make a lot of neat things. So if you can see there, I've got the word spells. And once that dries, I'm going to go and get the little stickies off so that I don't have to deal with them later. And as you can see, I didn't worry about, like, I guess you could say my handwriting, because I wanted it to look a little creepy. So there we go. Turn off my hot glue gun now, and we'll get to the fun part. All right. So what we're going to do is take a tissue, and we're going to divide it into the individual plies. So we want this to be nice and thin. And then we're going to take the black glue, which is white glue with black paint. If it started to separate, just go ahead and stir it back up. It should be fine. It should look like this when it's ready to go. And taking the brush, we're going to put just kind of a thin layer over part of the book. This is just to get the tissue to stick. But what we're essentially doing by putting the paint in the glue, we have watered the glue down so that it's more like Mod Podge, which is what we're going to do. So I've got the black glue over most of that page there. So it's on like that. And then taking one ply, and I'm going to put it on top, like so. So you see it's kind of sticking there already, which is why we put that base layer down. But then we're going to take the sponge with the black glue, and we're going to just dab that glue on to Mod Podge the tissue onto the book. And by using this black glue, we are both Mod Podging and painting at the same time. So we're kind of saving a step there. And we just want to get that all covered. And I will bring the camera over so you can see what I'm doing here. So what I'm doing here is just dipping the sponge in and then dabbing it to Mod Podge that tissue on. And this will take a little bit of time. So, just be patient with it. When you get down to the creatures, or if you've added something else to your book, you'll want to make sure that you are getting that tissue down in between so that it's all the way down and sticking to the book. If it's bubbled up, it's going to look kind of weird when it's done. So if you need to, you can take the paintbrush that you were given and use that to kind of push down in between. I've noticed, like with the skeleton, where the holes are, I had to kind of break the paper over that. And my cover was black, but if you're using a book that is not completely black, you might want to give it a good coat of paint before you put anything on that's going to maybe have holes in it, like the skeleton does. Just because it's kind of hard to get in and paint after it's already on there. So then just keep doing that. If your paper bunches up or tears, that is not a problem. If it's kind of bunched up, just maybe try to spread it out and flatten it, even if that makes it tear, because you don't want it to be too thick, but it's totally okay if it tears, because you can always just add more on. And I'll show you. That's pretty good. I'm going to put a little layer of paint here on the bottom of the book. Oops, see, I tore that. And then I'm going to take one of my other plies, and I'm going to just tear some off. Doesn't have to be perfect. Even though that's ragged, that's fine. And I'm just going to lay that over the top and then get right back to work. Whoa, had two plies there. Now, to get to the back of the book, what we're going to do is open it so that it is papers down, both sides are out, and if you want to decorate the back as well, you can. Otherwise, just do the same thing, put on some paint, put on some tissue paper, and dab away. So as you can see here, when I put this one on and I tore it, it didn't really cover completely. And that's okay, you don't have to have it 100% completely covered, but you can also layer it up, especially with some of the creatures. Like if the paper tears, you can just keep layering it on. One of the snake's heads that I did earlier, just kept popping up, and so I ended up putting like 2 or 3 layers of tissue over it before it would just stay on. And that is perfectly okay. So you see how that kind of covered up those ragged edges, and maybe this doesn't go straight to the edge. You can add on as much as you want to. You could leave some spots bare. It's completely up to you. But once you have your book completely covered, or as covered as you want, then it is time to stop and let everything dry. So I'm going to keep going until this is completely covered in black. You could have some of the white spots showing. You can see like, I guess they didn't, but like in this one, there are some spots where you can see the color kind of showing through, and it's not that bad. It kind of adds to the overall creepiness. But you do want to get it covered as pretty well as possible. And then you want to let it dry completely, and that will probably take a couple of hours. But make sure that it is completely dry before you move on to the next step. And I also wanted to mention that these books that you have in here they were bound for the recycle bin, so you're actually giving them a second chance at life. All right, so just go ahead and keep working until it's completely covered. And then while you're letting it dry, that's a great time to go wash your brush and your sponge. And we will check back in when this is done and dry. All right, so now this is dry. When it was about halfway dry, I came back and I touched up some spots and put on some more of the tissue paper where I thought it needed it. I could probably do a little bit more, but we're just going to go ahead and move on. And it doesn't really look like much right now. It's just all black. But we're going to take care of that with the metallic paint. All right. So you don't want to have too much on your brush. So what I would recommend that you do is you get it on your brush and then just kind of paint onto a piece of paper or something so that it's just a really light coat on there. And then we're going to just brush it really lightly along our creatures and the words and maybe some random spots on the books themselves. But you don't want it to be too thick on there. You want it to just be really gentle. We're not actually painting this on, we're just kind of highlighting with it. So now that's starting to take some definition, starting to look a little bit more like something. All right. Now for the letters, I am going to do it a little more paint on the brush, just because I really want those to pop out. So I'm going to do a little bit more on that. All right. So now once I've got those accentuated, maybe a little bit more on this guy here. Then I'm going to, with the brush really brushed out, I'm just going to kind of do some streaks just to kind of catch where those ridges are is kind of what we're hoping to do. To kind of just give it some color, some highlight. And that would be it. If you go to the website on the instructions where I got the idea for this craft from, you can see where that person did the same thing, but instead of with books, she did some like vases and bottles and turned them all spooky. So that's our final product right there. I hope you enjoyed making this, and I hope that you have a happy Halloween. Thanks. Bye-bye.